And we are live, folks.
Cool.
Um,
Well, did you want to start, Maiko? Or if not, I've got a few things I wanted to ask about.
okay, sure. Oh, I don't know if Live Fast answered your question though, but I don't think that there's too many people exerting their own personal expenses. It seems like some of us have fronted certain costs that we already knew we wanted as a group, like Stubbs fronted the cost for the Gitbook Pro account, but that's getting compensated. So I wouldn't assume that you should cover any of the expenses on your own. But like ideally, we would sort of pitch a proposal before spending the expenses. Like I pitched the proposal for Tally So Pro before paying for it because I just wanted to see if that was something we wanted to pay for. Um, but anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may have messed up. That's also on me. I recognize that. So.
No, but you also obviously Hero and I don't know. Did St. John want some? I mean, these guys definitely want to help you make it happen. I'm sure. So.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cool that it's just like a decentralized thing. Like just somebody in the community wanted to do it. It doesn't have to be coming out of the official DAOPunk's merch store thing, So I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it just it was just a simple. Do you mind if I do this? Because I just wanted one myself, and I just cover it. But then a lot of people were like, "Oh, you should I want one too." They're like, "Oh, can you make a few?" Yeah.
Totally.
So I guess I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. Because worst case, it wasn't too bad, but we'll see. But yeah, back to grants.
Word. Well, I'd be happy to just send you some ETH or DAI or whatever for shipping, and the cost of the patch to get mine.
Yeah, sure.
I think that seems a fair enough way to receive compensation. Just to maybe maybe Sinjin or Crypto Bougie's like, hey, could you send us 20 of them so that they can have them to hand out or whatever?
Yeah.
Just pay for a big chunk of it or something.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so on to grants. I do have a little bit of an agenda here if I can read through it if y'all don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Get started.
So I've got considerations for the screening committee. First off, I'll just say that I have a pretty good. I've got the grants program handbook pretty well laid out in the Gitbook. So if you guys want to go to the Gitbook and look at that, you'll see the grant program handbook with a little yellow booklet icon next to it. And this is meant to be a repository for just everything that somebody needs to know to run the grant program. And I'm trying to reflect as closely as possible the ratified grants proposal. And I'm noticing that there's actually a couple of interesting conflicts in the ratified proposal versus what we've been discussing lately for what we imagine is going to happen. And some of that has to do with how much do we actually want to ask the community to vote on stuff and whatnot. But
right.
We'll go through and smooth those out. But I mean, in my opinion, because I'm kind of a democracy governance purist, I'd be we have to do what the ratified proposal says because it was ratified by DAO vote, unless we propose changes to it and that is ratified by DAO vote. But it seems stuff is negligible, and it'll be fine. Look, one of the things is that the screening board is selected by a sesh poll. The screening board members are selected by a sesh poll in Discord, which is fine. and then the final results of that sesh poll get ratified through a DAO vote. So looks like we're gonna have to like work up some community engagement to vote on the like who actually is on the screening committee, and included in that vote needs to be a operational framework for the screening committee. And the language from the ratified proposal is like, this is a team charter that describes their work practices, approaches to screening, as well as a social contract related to avoiding biases and declaring conflicts of interest. So like declaring conflicts of interest and stuff like that's kind of personal to like whoever happens to be on the screening committee.
Sure.
Like one of those things could be like, oh, Garrett's on the screening committee and he also helped write the grants program. That might be some kind of a conflict of interest to be aware of. But like, so we're supposed to draft that out. So I figure I'll just draft that out in the coordinator's guide handbook. And so included in that is going to be the parameters for screening. So this is going to be like, what are the individual committee members actually looking for in as far as who they're going to include as finalists and who they're going to exclude? And like, it just seems like there's going to be a lot more valid applications than we want to include as finalists. So it's going to come down to just like a lot of personal preference among the screening committee. And I don't know how we would go about defining the actual parameters. We might just say that it's kind of just up to the personal, it's just up to the whim of the screening committee. I don't know exactly, how to put that.
Well,
what do you guys think?
I think the first and foremost, it has to be, answering the questions that we put as, requirements or what's the word? As like ideal candidates. Like, are they willing to do this? Do they have experience? Are they going full time? Do they actually have a roadmap? Like, did they fill out the application completely? Are they willing to, give feedback and participate in a feedback, during and afterwards? As far as like checking off the basics, and then after that is discretion, I feel.
Yeah. Okay, wait, let me just list those out. So we got willing to engage, and that's engaging in the community AMAs, the Discord server, the newsletter, and the podcast. And then we have completed the application, ready to transition.
Complete.
Yeah, ready to transition.
Has some DAO experience. I don't know if that's like for cohort 0. I thought we were saying that was necessary to have at least some idea of participation in a DAO.
Yeah.
For at least for cohort 0.
Should we conflate that to having experience with some DAOs? Like, there's one question that says, have you actively participated in any DAOs?
Hey guys.
Hey Stubbs.
Oh, hey Stubbs.
Yo, what up?
This is just to quickly just backtrack. This is for what we're asking. This is the screening. What we're discussing right now is the screening after we have the applicants, and then you're trying to whittle down the number of applicants to a smaller subset for vote, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I thought about this for the week after I saw the comment on here. I personally believe that there shouldn't be any whittling down of the numbers. And my rational thought is that you want, like, I believed from the discussions is that you wanted this to be as decentralized and open to anybody as possible. The screening committee's job, in my view, should be, is the application itself and the person who's proposing it willing to does it meet the criteria as we define it to be rewarded this? After that, it just should go straight to the community vote, and as many as we have, the community is up to there. If the screening committee narrow-mindedly like excludes people from it, that is kind of, I feel like that is what you don't want to do, and I think that goes against what you guys had originally intended this for. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I think that the goal is to have a number of finalists that the community actually can read through. Because I mean, if we have 40, applications up for DAO vote, like what are we expecting is actually going to happen? Like the community is going to read like a couple of the ones on top and then just vote for those.
Right.
Are they going to actually read all of them? Like I don't know.
It's actually, I really like your thought there, because you're like, if people are only reading a few, the people who are applying, if they throw in the chat, hey guys, hey, I'm applying, and it's somebody who's active in the community and engaged, and it's like, if one of you threw in an application, I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go read it because I know you, because you're in the Discord, I've seen what you've done, let me make sure I check your application. And it's like, I guess if you're not willing to kind of throw it out there that you're applying, then maybe it's not the worst thing in the world that people, like, if you don't have people voting for you, you should be campaigning almost and saying, hey guys, look at me.
Yeah, I also feel that you're giving more power than that was intended to the screening committee by excluding something. And then that would be, if you set a hard number, you're basically looking for like that's it, and there's no wiggle room. I mean, but there's identifying a problem isn't very useful if you don't also offer some type of solution as well, because this is a very complicated thing, and I don't know whether what's right or wrong, but my solution to the issue is that maybe you consider we have to break this down into two votes, where basically maybe kind of like what I think it's one of the countries, I think it's like France, that do like they essentially for any like election they have to you do a full vote of all the candidates, and then unless somebody wins like the majority of like whatever we want, then you have a runoff of like the top, like then that's where you set the number, you have a runoff of the top like X number of candidates, and then we go to that second vote to determine who wins. I think maybe that is something that we should really consider as this like more decentralized screening process.
Yeah.
I like it, and here actually this ties into what I was going to propose today, because the way I was envisioning it was, the screening committee will, I guess the idea is that they'll organize the data, they'll remove, obviously, unqualified, unfinished applications, or spam application, stuff like that, where there's at least filtering and then anonymizing it. So just to Stubbs' point, that it's ideally we're trying to prevent any sort of reputation-based bonus, just to at least give people like a fresh look at the idea on the application itself. But I guess that also conflicts with my vision for giving people an opportunity to ask questions about an application for clarification. Allowing the applicant to respond and clarify, but maybe we should only allow that for the finalists, for it to be like that open, campaigning or discourse. I mean, what do you guys feel about that?
It's interesting. Like, so reading through the ratified grants proposal again in order to refine it into the handbook, I noticed that first off, like kind of what LiveFast is saying is kind of right. Like the language in here is saying that the role of the screening committee is just to exclude obvious disqualifications,
Right.
but not necessarily to whittle it down to a palatable number. I think that's something that we've added after the fact, talking about practicalities. But then it does say that there's a finalist community call, AMA. So that would be like all of the all of the applicants who are going to be included in the DAO vote participate in an AMA with the community, either in the Discord server or on Twitter Spaces. So,
well, that makes sense to me. Like, in order
yeah.
to become a finalist, you shouldn't be able to leverage your reputation. But once you are already selected as a finalist, then I don't see the harm in allowing people to have that AMA, talk more in depth.
This is also under the presumption that all the we have an exorbitant number of finalists. So maybe we consider this that we don't limit the screening committee to any type of applications. As long as it meets the criteria for it, we presented it out, and then we reassess this. We reassess the process of whittling down to a reasonable finalist with either runoffs or a runoff vote or some type of aggregate vote after we've done maybe at least one to really gauge how much what the kind of applications we're going to get as compared to try to solve a problem that we may not actually run into. I don't
Right. I mean, we can easily limit the number of applications that we receive. So we could just cap it at 40 or 50 or 100 or whatever we feel like is reasonable. And I would assume that, I don't know, I mean, it's hard to guess how many applications are actually going to be valid in the end.
That would be something. But I mean, also, and here's also the one wrinkle in everything. If I recall correctly, once you submit an application, you're not eligible to submit it again, correct?
Yeah.
Or
no, yeah, you can't resubmit multiple times or something like that.
But here's my other here's my thing. That kind of I don't know if maybe you guys see the problem with that as well. Is that so we only have a finite number of potential money or money to give to these people for their proposal. Maybe we need to reconsider the you only get one shot at this, and not you only get one shot at this time, and let people try to pitch it for a second round of it if we do get more funding and we want to continue this, because you never know what the idea that people have is just that we wanted maybe people wanted to give them this opportunity, but there were also so many other good proposals at the time, and we just couldn't give it to everybody. And I feel like that's an undue hindrance.
Well, just to clarify though, that it's not one application forever. It's just per cohort. You're allowed to reapply for each cohort.
Yeah, they only. Maybe maybe I misunderstood, which is very possible. That I thought that you get each cohort only got one application, and if they didn't make it, they couldn't submit that application again at a later time to reattempt.
No, that's definitely not what it's supposed to be. So I wish that we knew what gave you that idea, because definitely that's not worth thinking. We just don't want people, submitting 3-4 applications.
Yeah, two. Okay, that might I may have. Sorry, I very trying to absorb as much information. I may have misread and may have drawn a wrong conclusion, which is very highly possible.
No problem.
That's so no. Then yeah. Then I think then let me go back. Then I think that the screening committee accepts every accept every proposal, and it goes up to a vote at the community level. And then if that's the case, then if somebody doesn't get that opportunity at that time, then they could just go to, or they could just use that proposal for the next one if they so choose to. And I think that kind of that's it. I think that's what it should be. I don't know if there's a limit. I don't think we should limit it. I think we should keep it as open as fair as possible. Everybody gets a fair shot at at the time it is open. But like I can be persuaded to, like, I could be persuaded to like limiting it based on whatever factors. Like if we leave it to like an infinite number of applications and we get like 400, then like, yeah, like nobody's going to be able to read 400 proposals.
That'd be a
Maybe we cap
problem,
it on
yeah.
there. But like at least, but we don't. I don't know. Like I don't know how much it is, or maybe that like maybe we need to. On the flip side of that is that like maybe so many people want to do this transition, and like this is the first of its kind of the means that we need to have all these applications and we need to go through them. You know.
I
So
mean, I think that we want to accept all of them because, that would also be a really great data point when it's like, we need more funding and, going to other things like Gitcoin and whatever and saying, hey, help us fund more people. We had 600 people apply and we only had 3 grants.
Right.
You can show all the applications, whereas then we're like, man, there were so many people who wanted this, but we had 50 applications and we capped it, but there were hundreds of people and they're like, we're there.
yeah, and like we can. I've been mulling over this for like the last week about it, and it's just I personally believe that like there should be no limit. It's as long as the application meets all the criteria, we go. And if we will learn so much the moment we have the first application open and we get the first one. And I think that will really dictate to us our next steps. I don't know how you guys feel about it, or if you see the end goal as well as I do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I initially and probably still, like, I was advocating for the same position that you are, and I think it goes in a couple different directions. On the one hand, as Stubbs said, like there's a lot of benefit to just receiving as many applications as possible. Like one of those benefits is to be able to show how many people are interested in the grants that we're giving out. Another one is that we can actually use the data that they're providing for talent placement or for the work board, the talent board, that kind of thing. And that data is valuable. But if we do that, like if we optimize for receiving as many grants as possible because of the value we gain from that, then we have a problem where we have too many applications to sort through. But then what we've talked about so far for cohort 0 is to put a smaller cap, since we don't necessarily have the framework to like handle all of that traffic or to handle that much data. That we'll try to keep cohort 0 small, just as like a beta round. And if you let the number be really big, then you need a screening. You need to reduce the number of applications for the DAO to vote on, because you can't expect the people to read that many applications. But if you cap the number, then we can just be all inclusive. But you're still not necessarily being all inclusive, because you're just saying whoever happens to apply first has a chance. And if you waited an extra day before the limit was reached, then you're excluded for that reason, rather than being excluded on the basis of like the judgment of the screening committee. So I don't know, it's like one way or the other, you're excluding people somehow, and it's kind of a matter of being.
But would it be better to exclude people because for whatever reason their application doesn't get voted for? Because because we should be able to have these applications like show up randomly, right? So it's not just always application 1 being at the top for people to view.
Right.
Yeah.
It has to be shuffled or something.
Yeah, so if we shuffle it, then if you don't get voted through, then at least, because it wasn't read, at least there was the opportunity for it to be read.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity to say, hey guys, I submitted my application. If you do me a favor, and if you're going to read 5 of them, have mine be one of the 5. And I think that is less opportunity for us to accidentally exclude people in a meaningful and potentially a way that we don't see coming, than if we just say, hey, everyone who wants to apply, as long as it's filled out, you're there. And we can't guarantee that 100 people will see your application, but we can guarantee that 100 people can see your application.
Right. I like the idea of the randomizer and the shuffle thing. I think that was like back when we were initially talking about this, I think that was something that came to mind as far as like the most decentralized and inclusive way to do it. If you know that the community who's DAO voting are not going to read every application, at least you're randomizing the ones that they can see. And
First,
we'd have to build that
Maybe-
out somehow. I don't know how we would actually
maybe
do that.
on our,
but-
I mean, my vision of this is like the website that would allow us to review the document per page view immediately randomizes the list of what appears on top every time.
Yeah.
You are that way. It is every person who clicks on it every time gets a new top list.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it
that's
wouldn't be too
interesting, yeah.
complicated to build directly into the website with some CSS coding. I mean, that's another discussion topic for this is the website integration. So we can table that until we get to that point. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. That's a
I just put it
interesting,
in the notes. I thought that was really my good thought of the day.
nice.
my other thought was, and I was getting to this before, but I thought it would be, instead of doing like a sesh poll type thing to whoever's involved. I'm not saying committee or just the general Discord, whoever it is. But in order to whittle it down to the actual snapshot vote, are we in agreement that the snapshot itself should only be 10? Or what are your thoughts on the actual snapshot?
So, I mean, if we had all of if we did this like 2-round vote, kind of like Live Fast was talking about, where it's like everyone sees round 1 and then it's whittled down, like maybe even do like a rank voting for round 1, so that you can get a top 10, and then do the AMA and everything for the top 10 or 5, whatever we want to do. I mean, it should probably be 10 if we're only doing 3 grants. And then have those people go. So yeah, 10 people will go to the snapshot vote. But I don't think that we can do that unless we do, a preliminary round. And I think for the preliminary, we could do a sesh vote, or something simpler like that rather than a full snapshot.
So my thought, instead of the sesh, was that maybe we could even do, so I've been looking at Coordinape more, that just to actually get the tool implemented in the Discord and have people engage with it, that we could use Coordinape as the voting mechanism for the first.
Cool.
I was thinking about that too, and I was wondering if it's too much to ask of the community, but we're already expecting them to engage with the mid cohort follow-up, Coordinape round. So might as well apply it to the vote too, because I feel like weighted voting is like a better way to do voting rather than to just give somebody 1 vote or 3 votes or whatever. You actually give them the opportunity to weight, like, okay, I'll give this one 5 points and I'll give this one 3 points and I'll give that one 2 points and that one 1 point. And Coordinape kind of facilitates that. It also kind of facilitates like the display feature has it like a network instead of a list, which is nice. Like, I was wondering if that might be a good way of implementing the kind of randomizer, is like, instead of just randomly displaying one application, it kind of just shows you like this big kind of network visualization that you can click on, and like maybe the thing that you actually see when it shows you like a whole pile of applications is just one of the questions. Like, you know, it'll display the question about what inspires you or something, and so you'll just see a whole bunch of all the different answers to that one question, and then like if something intrigues you, you'll just kind of click on that one and read the rest of the application. I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to look into. If we were going to use Coordinape, I would want to like do a test round and see if we can get people to fill out a bunch of test applications so that we can see. I feel like it would probably be a lot of work to like port the applications over to Coordinape interface. We'd have to like manually like copy and paste like the submissions into that interface. I'd want to see like how much work that's going to be before we commit to that, but it's an interesting idea.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely have I'll lay out a proposal with Coordinape as that vote for next meeting. So that way we could just say, hey, this is too complicated, or even before then, if I'm like, hey, this is not feasible.
Well, so I mean, one thing to think about though is like if any of the other voting solutions that we use, Smash Poll, Snapshot, whatever. Well, I guess Snapshot we'd still have to copy and paste the stuff in. So every solution that we have, we would either have to say,
Yeah.
go look at the application over here and then vote somewhere else. So I think that even if we couldn't integrate it directly, we can still use it and have it be awesome because no matter what, we have to have them go from one place to another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Well, I mean, one possible solution, if we did have too many applications to do manually, is like if we had an interface on the website, then you can have some code that just like ports the data over from the spreadsheet, you know, and just says like populate this box with the information in this cell, and kind of do it that way. It would be like more automated, but that's probably not what we're going to end up doing for cohort 0. So
For future, I could see that, but that's like, you know, building out all that infrastructure might be overkill for the first round, but I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say let's definitely not worry about that for the first round just because we still have so many unknowns and everything that it's like, even if it's a little bit clunkier, let's do something that then we can get it out there.
Yeah. So
We could.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, after we do the first the vote for cohort 0, we should do a poll on everybody who voted as well to get their thoughts on how the entire process was for them, like clicking the links or going to all the different sites, and then just get general feedback of what they wanted to help give us the idea of like, well, what do we need in a build out?
Yeah.
So basically an exit poll.
Yeah, exit poll.
What do you guys?
And as other people go through it, I'm sure there are some people that are really skilled in the technical side that would be like, hey, this is how you did it, and I know it's dumb because I know how to do it better in this other way, and it's easy. Whereas if we try to brainstorm it, potentially we come up with the hardest possible way. So
Yeah.
More than likely, it seems.
Yeah. I think the exit poll is a great idea. So what do you think about like the way that we display? We display the applications randomly to people who are voting somehow on some interface. So then the question is like, what exactly do we display? Do we display one random application at a time? They have to look at the whole thing, or do we display like a visual pile or network of them with just one question? Like we display the answer to one of the questions and then they click on it to expand to see the whole application. Like, because then it kind of leaves it up to the individual to be like, oh, that one looks interesting. I'm gonna check that one
Yeah.
out.
I definitely vote in favor of just having the blurb be their answer to, like, what is it that you're trying to do? Like, what is your roadmap, or what actually is your idea or your goal?
Right. It
I
could
think
be
that's the easiest question. Yeah.
the question that is, how will this grant help you add value to the DAO space or the DAO sphere?
I think nothing. You give them potential application number 1 and you list it, and it's all randomized.
So the whole thing.
The
Okay.
whole thing. You
Yeah, I
because
agree with
because then you're putting then the because the I think the emphasis should be on the person reviewing it needs to go in without any like bias of like going to just automatically exclude for whatever reason, because for of like whatever what the contribution segment could be, you know it could be nothing or it could be something, but then the actual application is like either good or bad, and I don't feel that we should put that on like that preliminary screening. I think it should just be like everybody should have the idea, like go in with the fairest possible chance without any kind of like delineation. It's just they review the application, they review it as a whole, and if somebody wants to stop reading for whatever reason, they have that opportunity. But they at least they got to the application as a whole and they weren't judged on it as they were reviewing it. Does that make sense? Did my thought come across right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think so. I totally agree with that. I think there are really cool things that you can do with the like, hey, here's a pile of the network and what's an answer that grabs you. I think there's cool stuff you can do there. But if we're trying to make sure that everyone has a fair shot at getting their application reviewed, I think it's just randomize the applications and let people get started.
Okay.
So it sounds like what we're maybe looking at so far is just give them a web page that randomly displays one full application at a time. Expect them to take note of whether they like that one or they want to vote on it. Click the button at the bottom that says show me the next random application, and then they just keep reading applications until they get bored and stop, and then they have to remember which one that they actually want to vote on. Or
Yeah. So, or yeah, so basically, yeah, something like that. Like, or the page that like they gives it to the page that brings them to the application itself is like the main front page is a full list of every application from top to bottom, and that list is completely randomized every time.
yeah,
But there's like an identifier. It's just like, oh, number 1 is application number 1 or 12 or 23 or whatever, and then like the header is just like when they click on it, like here's application number 24. Please remember to mark this down if you enjoyed it.
Right.
And like just
Yeah.
making
If I received just a application and it said read the next one, I think it would like drive me crazy not knowing how many there are
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
being able to go back to the last application because I wanted to read it for whatever reason. I think I would like lose my mind with anxiety if I
Totally.
Yeah.
just
I don't think that that's a good approach either. I like the random
maybe
list idea.
just a random list and just say there are 60 applications in here, and they're like and be like at the header be like this is randomized every time, like and just say that like make a note to like that just says they're like please if when reading please make note or like please take please take personal notes of the application number that you are reading if you have any additional comments or concerns. Maybe if we wanted to build it out later, we could probably make it like I don't know, like maybe include some type of like functionality that just like you're allowed to like mark the application that you like for later review instead of having to take like a post-it note and write it down.
Mark it as a favorite or
Yeah.
because there has to be an immutable identifier that can't be randomized, because that would mean every time you go to the site, you're thinking you're reading application number 1, but it's a completely different application number 1.
Yeah.
There would have to be at least one thing that's permanent.
Yeah. So my idea is that like each application is assigned a number, like application numbers 1 to 60. The list is just like the list is all 60 applications, but the order is not 1 to 60. It is like
Right.
that's the
Number
randomness.
5 stays number 5, but it just changes position in the list that you get every time.
It might be last. Yeah, 5
Yeah,
could be
cor-
the last or
exactly.
something.
Correct.
Okay.
And our vote corresponds to, and our vote would be corresponds to that number of like you read that. They're like, you like that. That's what you're going to vote for. Number 5, number 12, number 18.
And the snapshot vote itself would just be, okay, do you want to vote through number 1 through 60? Which one? Or which several, like, do you actually select? And so the snapshot proposal doesn't have to have a ton of information on it. It just basically just has a list of numbers that points to a repository of those applications.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, wait.
Yep,
what if we might be able to program? And Garrett, you might know how to do this. I feel like we could program a spreadsheet to randomize the order of rows, and actually just display a spreadsheet, or have the data in the spreadsheet and display that spreadsheet through the web interface. And then they can just click on a button, like the snapshot proposal itself can actually point to the spreadsheet, and people can go look at the spreadsheet just to like double check which number it was that they were looking at. That would
I definitely think there's a way. Yeah.
That would be a different spreadsheet from the private spreadsheet that has everyone's contact information on it. So basically all we would have to do is, you're working on formatting the output spreadsheet that has all the information. Then we would make a public spreadsheet that just populates the cells from the public cells in the private spreadsheet, and the public spreadsheet. So we just have a private and a public spreadsheet that would be separate. And the web interface would just pull from the public spreadsheet, and that one would be like public and visible and can be referenced from the snapshot proposal and referenced from like whatever interface that we're using.
I think we're on the same page, but I definitely think there's a way for me to do that in the Excel on the back end.
Okay, cool.
Where every time the website is going to populate the list, it just is in a different order, basically. Now, my question though, because the one thing I am confused about is, so you're saying we want to use snapshot for is it multiple snapshot votes you're saying, or you're just saying one snapshot vote with every application, and then the one with the most votes or the top 3 are the grantees? Am I missing something, or?
Well, what the ratified grants proposal has said is that there are 2 DAO votes that need to happen. One of them is to select the screening committee, and then the other one is to select the final cohort. That's all I'm talking about. I mean, I think in this discussion we've been talking about doing like a preliminary vote and then a final vote. I don't know. That's outside the bounds of like the ratified grants proposal, or at least, not described by it. I don't know if it would be in conflict to it, but
I don't think it'd be a conflict, but I mean, definitely the way that I think that, at least the way we talked about it today, is have one snapshot vote for the grantees, and then do a coordinate to whittle that down a little bit so that we can have that final snapshot with a reasonable number of applications. We almost need to, when we're looking at the grants, we almost need to have a vote with the DAO saying that, we're almost like the committee or whatever they want to do, because we've kind of gone back and forth where like we don't really want a screening committee, but we do have to have at least somebody take on the responsibility of filtering out the ones that are spam or not complete and things like that. So, you know, per the grants proposal, we probably should have a vote to authorize, you know, us and or some other people to be the screening committee that filters that out. I don't think it says prevents or specifies that we need to do that, you know, 1, 2, or 3 votes to get to the final selection. Or
Well, it
I mean, I
says
think it gives us
I'll just say what it specifically says. It says there will be an open election call and sesh polls in the server limited to only DAOPunk holders, and then a final election, final election results and proposed remuneration will be legitimized by a snapshot vote. That's for selecting the screening committee. And then the role of the screening committee specifically is just to exclude applications that don't meet the criteria. And the criteria are that the applicant is ready to go full-time DAO or recently did, that they know what they're getting into and has proven part-time DAO experience, and is ready to share their story and help others. Those are the only 3 criteria that the ratified proposal has laid out. So that's just,
I think
that's
still
just straight
apply.
out of the proposal.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we really do need to have some sort of, you know, a vote for the screening committee, which is basically what we have been doing right now. That was kind of executive vision so that things could get done. But I mean, we really should have a vote for that, but that doesn't vote on who is going through, which we could still do initially with coordinate.
Mm-hmm. So you want to do a coordinate round and then a snapshot vote, or only a coordinate round and that'll be the final result?
Oh, I was thinking a coordinate and then a snapshot.
Okay.
Just so that we could kind of whittle it down to make sure that for the snapshot, people actually do have the opportunity to read through all of the applications. Because, you know, with people are not going to be able to or will read through all of them if we have more than about 10 or 20. There will be some people who do, but for the most part, no. So if we do a coordinate round to get it down to 10, at least for the final round, we get, you know, half of the people who are voting to have read through them or more, ideally, but at least a larger percent of
That's
them.
what I think. Yeah, to appeal to, you know, get active participation and voting like from the DAOPunks on that final snapshot. I feel like a lot of DAOPunks would either not vote or just vote on the first few that can, you know, that are visible if they're expected to vote on all the applicants. You know, it's just like the burden of too many choices issue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Would we then have to require that applicants create a coordinate account and do it that way, or would we be able to just do that without requiring that they have to go through that process of like learning what coordinate is and how to deal with that?
Well, that's
I
something
think
I got to
that,
investigate. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I think that if you wanted, unfortunately, if you want to participate in voting, the people who are voting would have to, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's, the nice thing about coordinate is you can give everybody the ability to vote in different ways. It would be nice if you could send those give tokens to like the application that you want rather than requiring that it be like a person that signed up that's
Yeah.
attached to that application. Yeah.
Well, okay, no, yeah, you're right. And Coordinate was kind of built for a different reason, and we're kind of trying to adapt the vision, which might be interesting to them, honestly. It would be a cool case study for new features that they might want to build into it, like functionality. but they might already have some functionality that we're just not aware of that would allow us to happen. Or it might be easy enough for us to create the zombie accounts on their behalf and just kind of,
That was my thought.
and like the account
Or
can
do we-
just point to the spreadsheet, you know, like maybe we don't even have to populate like the account with the application itself. It's just like a bunch of little zombie accounts that says, I'm number 5, I'm number 6, I'm
Right.
number 12. Like, and then we would make the round be like DAOPunks who are voting would be not participating, or like that little checkbox that they say like, I'm not going to receive give, I'm only going to give. And it could work that way.
So at this point, though, would it be better to do something like collab land, and then so that we can verify that people have the DAOPunk NFTs, and then do basically a sesh poll, but through collab land rather than trying to do coordinate, since you are supposed to be sending it to other people's accounts and everything?
I mean, we could just put the sesh poll in a gated channel that people, you know, people have already done the collabland gate, so we just gate the access to the sesh poll in Discord.
Yeah, I know it's funny because you're like, oh, coordinate, perfect, awesome, and then I'm not sure if we're just trying to make it something.
My thought to use it was just because we're gonna have to have people use, you know, if we're still gonna use coordinate for that you know, that halfway point and, you know, that final allocation. I figure this would be just a good way to get people signed up for coordinate, have it be, you know, low stakes, you know, where it's not like allocating money, it's just, you know, getting used to the actual system and using it to vote, and also have like a weighted voting system by giving points to applications. That was my main thought for using it.
Yeah.
The difference is that
But
the
yeah.
preliminary would have 60 or 100 or however many different like members,
Recipients.
Yeah, recipients.
Yeah.
Whereas the mid cohort only has 3, and that's just like way more easy to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But do you still want to just kind of look into it? Because there might be an obvious solution that we're just not aware of.
Yeah, I still am going to look into that because I wanted to anyway, because it's coordinate. But there might be a feature in here that I just haven't dug into yet.
Okay, so just to
if not, I'll look at other options just in case.
So to outline like the options that we've talked about so far are 1, the coordinate idea. 2, we have random applications one at a time, which we don't necessarily like that idea.
Well, at least a randomized list that people can
and
then expand.
Right, and then we have randomized list. So I think that might be the easiest implementation, a randomized list, and then like no preliminary round. There's just a randomized list of applications, and the snapshot vote just has numbers 1 through 60.
Yeah.
You mean sesh poll?
No, the snapshot for actually voting on the final cohort members.
Because I thought we just were saying that having too many choices for a final snapshot vote was. I'm lost. I'm sorry.
Well, that's true. I'm just saying the options that we've discussed so far. I think we have pros and cons for all the different options, but this is just kind of like a bucket of options that we've discussed so far.
I'm sorry. Yep, you're just listing. Okay. Yep, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, okay. So coordinate idea, which we don't even know is possible, and then we have randomized list with a snapshot of 1 through 60, and then we have maybe we can do a randomized list with a preliminary.
Because I don't think that the snapshot needs to be a randomized list. I mean, maybe, but I think the preliminary, since there's so many, it needs to. But I don't know if we have to randomize the stuff for snapshots, since they should look through all of them and should be able to, since it's been pared down.
Okay.
And if you wanted to whittle it down, whittle it down by, and then the question then becomes whittle it down to what's the appropriate number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay,
maybe
so we're still in agreement that 60 is too many for the snapshot vote.
Yeah, 60.
Okay.
I think 60. I personally like 60 is just nobody's going to read 60 documents, and I don't even know how many pages it would be. Like if it's over 5 pages, that's no. Even if I bleed DAOPunks, like I'm not reading 60 documents.
Right.
Well,
but
it seems like we've circled back to where we were before we started talking about wanting to make it more open. You know what I mean? Like we've circled back to the reality that you can't expect everybody to read all the applications, and that there should be a limited number on the sesh poll. It seems like what we're talking about at this point is just like how to implement the screening committee. And now it's like we're talking about having 2 stages of screening committees. Like one is the screening committee that excludes invalid applications, and then the next stage of screening is like this preliminary vote that anyone can like participate in, but we don't expect like everyone to be able to participate or extend that much energy. So we're still like thinking about some process of excluding like applications which are totally valid, but they just don't make it to the final snapshot vote. And we're like, how do we whittle that down?
Maybe
because we have to do that. Like at the end of the day, since we don't have unlimited funds, there will be exclusion of perfectly valid, awesome applications where it's like you should get it. If it was just about I have money for you, do you have a good application or not, then you get it. I think the reason why at least why I think that it would be more valid and more fair doing it this way is because we're randomizing it, so it's not just like you or I or 5 people get to decide. You get to be voted on, but instead it's random, and random list supplied to 100, 200, 300 people. It should be a pretty good chance that most of those applications actually get looked at. Whereas if we don't randomize it, then we have to either have a small group of people read through all of them and split it up somehow. So that's why I'm thinking that it's still fair, even though not everyone will look at all of them.
It's almost like what if we say, instead of randomly presenting valid applications to people who will then vote on whether it should be included in the final snapshot vote, we just say we vet the invalid applications out, and then we just randomly select a number that get included in the snapshot vote.
Oh, now that's really gambling on it.
Yeah, totally.
Practicality and fairness is what is really boggling in my head. Maybe I don't know. Do you think we should just ask the community what they think if in a proposal, like when voting, do you want all applications to be considered, or do you want a subset to be considered of it, or have a runoff where have a runoff, and then just say they're if you want the runoff, here's a percentage of applications that will be presented to you for the final vote, 10, 15, 20, incremented up, and just get what the community wants. Because realistically, shouldn't we ask what people what the community is willing to do for their vote?
Yes, but also, I mean, people might not realize the implications of that because you're like, if you just randomly give them, so say you ask them if they are okay with just randomly providing 15 of the applications, then you're like you could get those 15 applications that are filled out, but the person literally just like put in a generic thing and they're not actually caring or trying, or it has nothing to do
Right.
with it, and it turns into a lottery. Whereas like initially, you know, depending on how we frame that question and how they understand it, they may feel like, oh, these are all people that are really, really good applications. And, it's just only the best applications are for this lottery. And that sounds like a good idea. But if it's just all applications are part of this lottery, they may feel differently. But depending on how they understand that
You,
question, it may be different. And I think
you're,
that's why we're
you're,
working on this and getting into the weeds.
you're right. I don't. You're absolutely right. There's no easy answer.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the hard thing about like I go back and forth on this 10 times in the same sentence, but you want what the community to get to decide, but also it's so hard to stay up to date with everything that's going on in one DAO, let alone all the DAOs that people are part of. And it's like, hey, this sounds like a great idea, and then you realize that actually burns the house down, and you didn't know that because you're not an economist.
Right.
So you wanted it,
I,
but it burned
Let,
yeah.
your house
let
down.
me try reframing one of my questions. Let me just try to reframe this one question for you guys. Do you feel that the final, the finalists, I'll just say finalists, it could be 10, 20, whatever, but do you feel that the finalists should have that open, whether it's a week or whatever, but that open week to have the AMA, to have engagement with the voters?
Yes.
Are we all in agreement on that?
Let me
in
ask a
the
question really quick.
proposal. So we'd have to change the ratified proposal if we weren't going to do that.
Here's one thing that is interesting though. So last week, Themes was asking about inclusion, diversity, all of that, and it is interesting because you're like, if we just let people do the application, then they have time to think about it. If they have stage fright and anxiety and all of that, then they can still get a good application in. Whereas if we have some public AMA, then if somebody feels attacked or they're shy or whatever, they feel like they can't communicate in spoken English as well as they can in written, or whatever it is, then suddenly that AMA does make it so that it unconscious biases come into play potentially.
I see.
It is, and I agree with Micah that like the the as it is now, we need to have an AMA, maybe Discord or whatever. It doesn't even have to be live. It could be, asynchronous. Um, but it is interesting the potential for people to be like, well, I had an incredible application, but then, because I was stuttering and blah, 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 suddenly people didn't vote for me, even though they still would have thought that like it was great, even
Okay.
though, and that's something we should think about and maybe in the future somehow we address. I don't know.
I think it's a very valid point, actually. But as far as the nature of DAO work being written, mostly, and in Discord, at least in my experience, but to at least have a written opportunity to ask people questions on their application and give people an opportunity to respond, or giving applicants an opportunity to respond, clarify, or even campaign, I think that's going to be vital and useful. And I don't know, maybe
I agree.
it's not that clear
Absolutely.
cut.
For having some way to ask questions and everything. 100%. I don't know if a live one or something like that is actually the best, but I definitely think people should be able to ask questions and respond.
Okay, so to just finish my point, so I actually am agreeing that it should be maybe a written. You write out all your questions, you give the applicants during that open voting period the time to respond, whatever. But the point is that if we are doing that, like you said, it's in the grant stock, whatever, that it doesn't seem feasible to allow every applicant that opportunity, because that would just be chaos and difficult to weed through. So I guess that was my main point. Like, is that open, let's say 60 or 100 on the snapshot type vote, and giving them all a chance to, respond individually, pass their application, seems unfeasible and chaotic to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think that it needs to be 10, 15 people on the snapshot, more than that, and it's just back to everything being um, just too chaotic again.
And yeah, because I think there's two levels of voters. There's the voters that are going to be here, however we decide to do it, coordinate, whatever, the whittling down vote, I'll call it. But then as for the final, DAOPunk's NFT snapshot vote, I would imagine that just like any vote, if it requires a massive homework assignment, we're going to either discourage participation or just encourage whoever's on the top of the list, to get the most votes. So that's the last I'll say about it.
So we're back circling around to like understanding the importance of the role of the screening committee, and it kind of seems like I feel like we could reframe it like we're talking about who is included in the screening committee. Like this idea of the preliminary coordinate round and stuff is trying to make there be more people involved in the screening process or the whittling process. I guess we could say the screening process is like removing invalid applications, and then the whittling process is just like picking out the best
Picking the top.
application. So it's like we still want a kind of small screening committee to screen, because that's just like a big homework assignment that we want to give a little bit of compensation for, and we need those people to do the diligence of reading through every single one. But then the whittling process seems like kind of what we're talking about here. And
Yeah,
we
right.
want to make the whittling process say any DAOPunk holder can participate in this, and we want as many of these applications to be considered as possible. So on a volunteer basis, like read through these and kind of just rank them. Like, what if we did like an upvoting thing like Reddit, where it's just like
Or
you
yeah,
have a bunch of
Reddit.
submissions
Fuck it.
and you just upvote them. And I don't know, maybe not, because then you'd get like upvoted ones would be closer to the top, and then those ones would get seen more often, and we don't necessarily want that.
Well,
maybe.
and
But
that's exactly why we're doing the randomized showing of the applications, because then
yeah,
there's no bias of it has a lot of upvotes or downvotes or whatever. It's just here's the first one you see, and you can go into it, and that's randomizing that with 100, 200 people. All of them should be at least in the top 5 a handful of times.
yeah.
Maybe we're at like an hour and a half about this, and it's I don't know how much more time you guys want to spend on this, because although this is like critically important, because this is like this is very important to us. I think the concern of what we should be doing maybe is just like, should we engage the community and ask them, like, what do you want a whittled down version to properly vote on, or do you want everything to do so? Do you know, or do you just want like just make a hard like cap of like a number, or do you want to just like spend a week and think about it and like think through it and then meet next week and just like come prepared with like an analysis of like the pros and cons of each of your ideas of like what is the best course of action?
I think that we should present to the community like the couple of ideas that we have of, it just goes to snapshot. It has a, screening to remove the um, invalid ones, and then a randomized viewing where they can look at all of them if they want to. They can look at a handful, and then a final snapshot. Just like kind of give these three or four options that we've been talking about, and then let them decide there. Um, obviously it's a little bit biased because we're ideas that we've talked about and we think should happen, or could work. But I do think that it makes sense to get the community's involvement. Like, there's no reason for us not to. I mean, for us to just decide, unless we have zero faith in the community, and then none of this should happen this way anyway.
I mean, there's a kind of the point that kind of came up at other times where we were making decisions, which is like, we are the community, and like the people who want to put in the diligence to actually understand the underlying issue are like at the meetings, and that's how you gain an understanding of like the nuanced reasons why this and that. Like, I'm totally not against putting out a proposal to the community, but I think the people who are going to respond are already like us. I mean, obviously there's like a handful of people missing from this particular meeting who might have been at other meetings. But I mean, I don't know. I generally agree. I mean, I just think that we have kind of like the role of doing the diligence to understand what actually makes sense. Like, we shouldn't leave that up to folks. Like, we shouldn't leave that up to them to say, should we do a coordinate round? But we haven't even vetted whether that's a viable option. At least we should vet like the viable options and think it through, and then present like the actual like viable solutions that we think would work, and say like, which one of these do you want to do?
So, and I don't think that we need to do like a full-fledged like proposal, kind of like we wrote out for the initial fiddle plan. I think it's just like, we've got these, three or four things that we think can work, but we're not, all of them have their pros and cons. Here's what we're thinking about. If you want to come to the meeting on, next week to voice your opinion, you can, or write it out in the chat. But here's what we're thinking about. Let us know your thoughts. Like, that's kind of the extent of what I was kind of thinking for putting it to the community.
Me too.
I agree with that.
And I do apologize that like I threw a monkey wrench into all of this.
No, this was an important topic. I mean, I've been writing out the coordinator's guide to cohort 0, and this particular topic was like needing clarity in order. This is kind of like an important next step for us to be able to actually launch the application. So it's a nuanced topic, and it's important that we get it right. And I think that we should continue to optimize for simplicity for cohort 0, and just do the option that works and takes the least amount of effort, because we want to just get this going as soon as possible. And we can come up with like really interesting, like more egalitarian ways of doing it with like improved visualization and whatever, like for future. But for now, I think it's just like, what is the simplest way to get 15 applications on a snapshot vote?
The simplest without any obvious, issues.
Right.
You're right. I mean, and yeah.
And as I'm thinking about this, the one model where we just have a randomized list on the web page, like, it's kind of like if we had a randomized list of the application identifiers, whether that's a number or whatever, and you have to click on one of those numbers to look at the application, like, that's kind of the same as just randomly displaying one application. because they don't know what they're clicking on anyway, unless we put like what they're clicking on is actually one of the answers to one of the questions, which it sounded like we didn't want to do that. So, I'm kind of personally circling back to the feeling that the simplest implementation might just be for like to have a preliminary whittling. We say like, hey, if anybody wants to help whittle, like just go to this link, and then it just brings them to a page that displays a random application. If they like the application, like they don't even have to read through the whole thing. If they like the application, they just click a little star, and it's just like, I like this one. And then it goes to the next random one, and it just goes to the next random one. Maybe it'll tell them how many there are and that they don't have to look at all of them. And then we just say like, oh, nobody knows how many stars any of the applications have until the end of that process. And then it's just like the 15 applications with the most number of stars on it are the ones that are included in the snapshot vote.
That's basically the whittling process.
That's the whittling process.
Yeah. So I'd say write that up as one of the options. I'll write up the cooridinape option as I'm going to explore that. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that's something that if we're going to present it to community or whatever, just this seems like we're just getting back down to debating the different options for it.
It is interesting though, because you've kind of convinced me on that a little bit, because as long as we let people know how many there are, and so they know that they're not going to be looking at this forever. I know they can stop, but like, and then, maybe make so they can go back so that they can reread something if they want to. But I actually really like the just give it a star or a not, and the most stars, like, because then they can go through it really quickly. They'll do more of them if they can just say this looks good or this isn't the best. They can go through 30 of them. Whereas if they have to like really judge them and decide which two they're going to vote for, that takes a lot of time and energy. But I like it or I don't. They can see a lot of applications.
Mm-hmm. And they don't really have to be careful about
So,
how many votes they're giving out. Like they don't have like a limited number. It's not like pick your top 5 and then you have to read them first and then you have to go back through and be like, okay, out of all of the ones I read, which ones do I like the most? It's just kind of like yes or no, for whatever random reason that you might have, and then we just collect the most stars out of the bunch.
I actually like that.
I mean, all right. I think we got our task for this meeting.
Cool. And then like the web implementation, like Cryers volunteered to do some work. Like I have been trying to coordinate with Overachiever, who's apparently like our go-to web dev, and he's been unresponsive. He actually it was like a whole week and he didn't even respond. And then he was like, oh, I just saw this, I'll do it tomorrow. But that was like 4 days ago. And he hasn't responded since. So I'm starting to feel like Cryers volunteered in Discord. And I really I was really excited because I got the application form like totally done like a couple weeks ago. And I was like, I want to see this like on the website, and it's just like, that's all it takes to get it on the website. But anyway, I brought that
here's
up.
another thing, though.
Oh, what's that?
So right now, in the Gitbook, I've got your application like on a couple different pages. I can go through it. It's embedded in the Gitbook. If we can't get them to get it done and that's holding us back, we could have people fill out the application through Gitbook.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's a number of really easy ways to do that. The only reason I wanted to get it embedded in the web page is because it would just look more integrated with our whole ecosystem, like a little bit more professional, instead of being like this kind of third-party pop-up. It just like actually just directly on our web page, and it has like the same background as the front page, and it just looks super clean. that was the main reason I wanted to do that
Yeah.
was for aesthetic purposes, but it's really easy to just have a link that takes them to a tallies.so page, or yeah, I mean, I like your idea of just embedding it in the docs, but
Yeah, because
yeah,
it's there right now, and it doesn't even like make you pop up to a new page.
yeah,
Like I'm in dark mode, and so having the white background looks really weird and jarring. But it's there. It doesn't take them to a new link or anything.
yeah.
And
So
I mean,
you saw that
the one
where I put
thing
it
that
in under the grant program handbook, or did you put it somewhere else in there as well?
yeah, well, I had put it so if you look at DAOPunk Liberation Fund, and then there's application process on that page 1. I also have it down on, where was it? I thought I had it 2 different places, but yeah, let me share my
Oh, I see
screen really
that
quick.
on page 1. It looks like we have a little bit of redundancy
Yeah,
because we were both working async on the Gitbook
yeah,
page, but check out my my grant program handbook section. I think that we would want to just merge the DAOPunk Liberation
yeah,
Fund section with that one and merge those together. But I'll keep working on that.
yeah. Because the only reason I had them separated was because almost the way I had thought of it was the grant program handbook may get into some of the details that we're not really getting into for the more basic one, but
I
as you
see.
can see,
Right.
since I got dark mode, it's not perfect, but I can go through all of it with within this without going anywhere else.
Yeah, totally. And then
So
yeah, and I think if we can embed the Gitbook into docs.daopunk.io, like that would be super cool.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have them get that done, but worst case scenario,
I mean, I could honestly,
if
I could
we
do
have to
it
just
if I just had the login information to the web hosting,
yep,
it's not it's
yeah,
not a complicated thing. It's just like literally copy and paste this into your DNS, information. Like I'm not a web developer, but
yeah.
it's like a really basic thing that all it
Oh
takes is
yeah.
somebody who
No,
has
it's
access, right?
just
Yeah.
uh-huh. Yeah, it was kind of like when I was asking them about, oh, I know we've got a LLC set up, or we might, and all that, and you're like, all I got to do is put in that we have it, and then we're good to get the free Gitbook. But there still are those silos of information, and there kind
Yeah.
of always will be as long as they're so. But
Well,
it is what it is. So
I think we can just shift those roles over to Cryers because he seems happy to do it, and hopefully CB can just hand him the login information to the
yeah,
web host, and then we can just get this done. Because I mean, it should only take like an hour or two for somebody who knows what they're doing, or less. I don't know, but let's see. Why did I bring that up? Oh, I brought it up because I kind of wanted to maybe outline the basic web implementation of this idea of just displaying a random application at a time. But I guess we'll just talk to them about it and see, like, is this really complicated or is this easy to do? But we would just have that public spreadsheet, and then they would populate each page from a random row in the spreadsheet, and then voila.
yeah, that would be cool.
And then they would have to have a way of collecting stars. So I don't know. That might be a little complicated, but
I would imagine that wouldn't be too bad. It'd just be like an interaction, but I'm not. Yeah, that's weeds that depending on what implementations they have. Yeah,
we would
doesn't
also
really
want to
matter.
probably gate
But
that too. We wouldn't want anybody to be able to just go there and start clicking stars for applications. I mean, it's supposed to be limited to
Yeah.
DAOPunk NFT holders. So I don't know if we'd be able to gate
Yeah.
that on the website. Like, I mean, it's starting to get a little bit complicated. Like, it'd be great long term, right? You go to this page and then you just have to sign from your wallet that says that you have the
Yeah.
DAOPunk, and then it lets you look at
I
the
mean,
applications.
we already had to connect our wallet to that website in order to like mint things or claim the t-shirts. So they already have that implementation. So we
Yeah.
should be able to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So,
I guess I'll write that up and outline like what that would entail and need, and then Gary, you're gonna look into the coordinate solution, and then we'll just compare those two to see which one is more or less work. And then if anybody has any other ideas, then we'll look at those, and we'll just like pick the one that doesn't have any obvious problems and is the least amount of work.
yeah, sounds good.
It sounds good to me, guys.
Cool.
Well, actually, I gotta run.
Yeah,
Okay.
me too. So
Yeah,
we'll talk to
we're
you
almost
guys
at
later.
2 hours.
Yeah. Well, we're making up for we missed yesterday's, so it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
All right, thanks
guys.
everybody.
Cool. Take care, you guys. This was a great talk.
Great.